Reading through the New Testament, one of the things that may have troubled you is the question of why Jesus did not defeat the Romans. Reading the Old Testament, there are a great many accounts of military deliverance. We see the story of the Exodus and the defeat of Pharaoh and his military force in the Red Sea, or events such as in chapter 17 of the same book, the defeat of the Amalekites, going into the Promised Land, the defeat of the Canaanites, and all these military threats that are defeated by the power of the Lord's deliverance. And yet in the New Testament, there's this occupying force within the land, and Christ comes, he achieves his deliverance, and yet at the end of it, the occupying force is still there. What went wrong? Was this somehow a stillborn deliverance? Did it not really take effect as it was supposed to? What went wrong? As we read through the New Testament, I think we have a deeper account of power that helps us to understand what really took place and the form of Christ's deliverance, and how in many ways it provides a fuller response to the threat of Rome than anything that a mere military deliverance could have done. I found the work of Oliver O'Donovan very helpful on this subject. He raises this same question, a question that may have bothered us since Sunday school, a question that maybe was answered with a platitudinous remark about the way that Christ brought spiritual deliverance rather than political. And yet, maybe it's our understanding of the character of Christ's deliverance that is misplaced. Maybe as we look closer, Christ does respond to the threat of Rome, albeit in a way that we do not quite understand. O'Donovan argues that there are many ways in which we can see the threat, power in society, not so much being that of contrary power, some opposing power in government and some obstacle to us exercising rule, but power as something that is lacking, power as something that is needed in order to rule and yet often is not present. We can think in extreme cases of things such as disaster, disease, famine. These sorts of forces prevent societies from ordering their life together. They do not have the means by which to coordinate. They do not have the physical strength or health. Whatever it is, society breaks down. And as we look at modern society, often what we're seeing is the loss of political power, not so much contrary political power. It's very easy to confuse these two things. And in the story of the Gospels, O'Donovan argues, what Christ brings is not so much deliverance from a contrary political power as the gift of power in a context where power of a true kind is lacking. Jesus' work in his acts of power is chiefly exercised against demons, against the strong man who, he argues, is holding Israel in his thrall. The strong man being Satan himself. As we read on through the New Testament and into the final book of Revelation, the great victory that Christ wins by his blood is the victory over the dragon, the great arch enemy. From the very beginning, in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, he's the serpent who deceived Eve. He's the serpent who was the murderer from the beginning, the one who removed man from the garden, the one who seeks to attack the image of God wherever he can. And the victory that is won is his casting down from heaven. The victory that is won is the raising up of the saints to rule with Christ. Now, as we read through the New Testament in the light of this, we maybe have a different understanding of the role played by political powers that are contrary to the church, such as the Roman Empire. O'Donovan observes that as we read the New Testament, Jesus does not give the expected responses to the questions about the didrachm tax or paying taxes to Caesar. He does not, on the one hand, give the quiescent secularist response that you just go along with that, that's their domain, and we allow the things of God to exist in this realm that is religious, and we divide that from the secular realm, and you do your secular duty and you do your religious duty. That's not the answer that he gives. Nor, on the other hand, does he give the zealots' response, the resistance to the authority of Rome. He doesn't give either of these responses. Rather, his response is one that reveals a confidence that the rulers of this age, that their age, their order, their power is passing away. And the compliance that is granted is not one that gives them great authority, but recognizes the limited realm of their authority and the fact that their authority is vanishing and the kingdom of heaven is the enduring authority. And just as an old regime, as it's on its way out, the writing is on the wall, we know that it's going to fail. In that situation, you might still respect the laws and obey the authorities, and yet there's this confidence that they do not have the final word. They are on their way out, and so as you obey them, you are not enthralled to them. And this is the response that Jesus gives, a response that is neither the quiescent secularist response or the resistant, rebellious, zealot response. Now, what does true political authority look like? When we think about political power, we tend to think in terms of coercive force and violence. Those are the paradigmatic forms of political power. We think of the power to put people in prison, the power to take people's lives, the power to deprive people of their property. All of these sorts of things are the paradigm case for us of power. There is a power of life, a power that is positive, a power that is unifying, a power that is encouraging, that exceeds all the powers that are merely negative in their character. And where these things are lacking, often people will have recourse to the negative forms of power, because those are the only forms of power at their disposal.